Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this demon, this slithering snake named Jared Kushner, has no business being anywhere near the White House. This is it here, standing next to who? Elon Musk and a group of Saudi princes. We're going to talk about this. I'm going to hold this up so you can see the blackboard better, the cork board. Look at it. Look at it. Look at its face. We're going to talk about it. So we are going to, like I said, we're going to talk about Jared Kushner. I wanted to just give you a better close-up of the images on the corkboard. This is a picture of Kushner. This was recently taken with Elon Musk, and notice the Saudi Arabians around them. We'll get back to that in a minute, but this was very important. I wanted to show you guys this picture. This is Jared Kushner with his brother Josh, and they're there with Mayor Bloomberg and who? That's right, Ghislaine Maxwell. So keep that in mind. And this image, I found this online. This is supposedly an image of a young Jared Kushner meeting Rebbe Schneerson from Chabad Lubavitch. Very interesting and disturbing, in my opinion, and we have many reasons to be suspicious of Jared Kushner based on what he did during the first administration. Maybe you don't remember that. But we'll get into this. So I'm going to try to keep this video brief. You guys know how difficult that is for me. But trust me, stick with me through the whole video. I think it's kind of important. Jared Kushner builds a Middle East business empire, and you can't look at this and divorce this from like what is happening with the current administration, plans for potentially a war in the Middle East. These are important things, right? There's a lot of stories about Kushner kind of using his connections at the White House to further his own business interests. Certainly he used it to get a pardon for his father, Charles Kushner, who was a felon. So keep that in mind. Kushner is now the largest shareholder in Care Bear Financial Group, the Phoenix Holdings. Kushner, who was instrumental in forging the Abraham Accords, has financial ties spanning regional friends and foes. So we're going to look at that article here, and you can see a picture of Ivanka and Jared in the Care Bear Nation. Okay, for a long time, Jared Kushner, son-in-law of President Trump, had his eyes on Care Bear Insurance and Financial Group, the Phoenix Holdings. It started with an attempt to acquire 25% of the company's insurance agencies and is about to end soon, with Kushner becoming the largest shareholder in Care Bear's largest insurance company. That's a 9.9% share. In building his stake, he bought shares from the investment funds that recently exited the company, Centerbridge and Gallatin Point, as well as from his old friend Yitzhak Shuva. This investment joins the purchase of 15% of the shares of the Schmelzer Family Holding Company, which Kushner's private equity fund Affinity Partners acquired a year ago for $110 million. And it seems Kushner isn't going to stop there. Of course he's not. He's got to build his empire here. Kushner visits the Care Bear Nation frequently and maintains contacts with a host of local business people and politicians. He believes in the local economy, sure, and has faith in the Care Bears' geopolitical situation. The man who started out as a real estate developer, 666 Fifth Avenue, ring a bell to anybody? Mainly in the New York area, has been building a thriving business empire with strong Middle Eastern roots in recent years, with close ties to Saudi Arabia and the help of Saudi capital. It seems that Kushner's fund, which he established at the end of Trump's first term, is betting heavily on normalization with Saudi Arabia and the upside that will come from this for businesses in the Care Bear Nation. So it's interesting to note that this this normalization of Saudi Arabia in doing business with them apparently will benefit businesses in the Care Bear Nation. Kushner made his first significant real estate deal while he was still a Harvard University student in the 2000s. Yes, using his family's money. He is a Nepo baby. He purchased apartments to the tune of $9 million in a middle-class suburb of Boston, which he sold for double the price after the area underwent gentrification. In 2005, he took control of the family business Kushner Companies after his father Charles began serving a prison sentence for tax fraud and suborning witnesses. Trump later granted him a pardon and has now made him the U.S. ambassador to France. It was more than that. Like, look up Charles Kushner. He was trying to run like a blackmail operation against his own brother. It's very weird. It involves a lady of the night, if you will. Just look it up. You couldn't make it up if you wanted to. The company, which for decades had invested in residential apartment buildings, began under Kushner's leadership to focus on small and medium-sized cities in the southeastern U.S., in part because large investment firms raised prices in larger cities. Among the company's major deals are an agreement to purchase a 5-building complex in Brooklyn Heights in 2013 for $340 million, as well as the luxury apartment tower in Jersey City, Trump Bay Street, which opened in 2016 after an investment of $225 million. But there is no doubt he has made the leap from real estate developer to investor only in recent years, after Trump finished his first term, and in no small part thanks to the connections he accumulated during his time as a senior advisor to the president in the White House. So he used that position basically to grift for his businesses, to benefit financially. Like I said, his businesses, and this was during the pandemic. He had his brother Joshua Kushner working with him to create, like I said, a database to track people. This guy is very weird, okay? In 2021, he founded his investment company, Affinity Partners. From the very beginning, Kushner targeted Gulf sovereign wealth funds. One of the first investors was the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Saudi Arabia, which invested $2 billion in his private equity firm. This happened just 6 months after he leaves the White House. In December, Affinity raised $1.5 billion from the Qatar Investment Authority and Abu Dhabi-based asset manager Lunate, according to Bloomberg. With that investment, the total assets under management of Affinity grew to $4.6 billion. So it wouldn't have had any money without Saudi Arabia and Qatar. It was previously reported overseas the fund examined more than 1,000 different potential investments and chose to invest in just a handful, fewer than 10 by 2023. Among the rest, it invested $150 million in a search engine for purchasing properties and vehicles and finding jobs in the UAE. $200 million in a California company that provides credit for solar energy products, and $110 million in a fitness technology company from Germany. Whatever a fitness technology company means. According to a recent report in the Financial Times, the large amount of capital that has flowed into the small company, despite his lack of investment experience, has put Kushner in a position to reap profits solely from managing the money. I have to say, it reminds me of Epstein a bit. With a commission of 1.25% on investors' capital, Affinity is expected to earn millions of dollars a year in management fees, with most of the money left over after covering operating expenses flowing directly into the pocket of Jared Kushner, the controlling stakeholder. Let him slither around, Like I said, because of these investments and these business dealings, he has no place being anywhere near the White House right now. In a May 2022 interview with the Wall Street Journal, Kushner said, "If we can get the Care Bears and Muslims in the region to do business together, people will focus on common interest and shared values. We have begun historic regional change that needs to be fostered and nurtured." Yeah, because everybody will just, become friends automatically if they buy luxury property from you. It's not just the Middle East that's in the spotlight. Last December, just 3 weeks before Trump's re-inauguration, Kushner received permission from the Albanian government to develop a luxury resort on Sazan, the country's only island in the Mediterranean. It is one of Affinity's best publicized investments to date. Kushner's plan is to turn former battle sites in Albania and Bessarabia into luxury resorts. Bloomberg noted Kushner intends to spend more than $1 billion building luxury hotels and homes in these areas with the aim of attracting the world's wealthiest people. This investment, like many of Kushner's new business ventures, is accompanied by reports around the world about acquaintances or connections that help him with business under the auspices of the White House, with Saudi figures almost always appearing in the background. Isn't that interesting? Now, we won't read this whole thing. I can link the article in the video description. You should read it yourself. Between Saudi Arabia and the Care Bear Nation, I would start there. This goes into, in quite detail, what his business has been doing, and I think it's very important. This part, between Washington and Gaza, very important. In Trump's current term, Kushner is ostensibly an observer on the sidelines, at most a shadow advisor. However, several recent statements by Trump specifically on the subject of the war, quote unquote, in the Care Bear Nation and the solution to Gaza the day after indicate the extent of his influence. A year ago, Kushner proposed a plan remarkably similar to the one Trump is talking about for evacuating Gaza residents from the Strip and settling them in the Negev or Egypt. Get the citizens out, then go in and finish the job, he said at the time, claiming, "I know it won't be popular, but it would be the right move." In an interview he gave to the Harvard Middle East Initiative in March 2024, at the height of the military operation in Gaza, Kushner remarked on the high-value potential of Gaza's seafront properties. He says, "Gaza's waterfront property, it could be very valuable if people would focus on building up livelihoods." Incidentally, one of the countries about which it recently reported might accept evacuated Gazans is Albania, the same one where Kushner is building a luxury resort. Isn't that interesting? In an in-depth interview with Invest Like the Best podcast published last December, Kushner laid out his plans in advance of the president's return to the White House and promised a dramatic expansion of the Middle East peace circle with one clear goal: an agreement with Saudi Arabia. The agreement with Saudi Arabia will be key, Kushner says in the interview, because 10 other countries will join right after it, including Pakistan and Indonesia. "We had many countries eager to join," he says. "Our vision was to create one economic bloc linking the port of Haifa in Israel to Muscat in Oman, allowing people to trade, transfer technology, and invest in one another," he said. Isn't this interesting? His hive. Kushner is surrounded by a small group of managers in his investments in the Care Bear Nation and generally. He has built himself a hive of professionals, people with substantial business experience in managing private investment funds. Investments are not made swiftly or suddenly, but rather after in-depth study. It's not that Jared Kushner comes to a conference room, hears details, and says yes or no. One of the most prominent people in his hive is Brett Perlman, who led his investment in the Phoenix. Perlman is a partner in Affinity and a member of the fund's investment committee. Before joining Affinity, he served as head of a family office specializing in private investments called HRS Management. That family office would invest in mid-sized companies in a variety of industries. At the start of his career, he was an analyst at investment giant Blackstone, where he spent 14 years in various positions. So these are the people, surrounding Kushner. Kushner has visited the Care Bear Nation a great deal in recent years. According to insiders, he usually divides his time between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. So there's that. Now, moving on, this picture, I mean, I understand that this is his family, but it's like I just cringe every time I see Kushner anywhere near the White House. As I said, this picture also makes me cringe as well because I'm like, great. Yeah, that weirdo. And it should be noted that it was a strategy in the past of the Care Bear Nation to engage in marriages of intelligence collecting convenience, shall we say. Mossad married into Palestinians. They even had children with them, spent decades living a covert life to feed information back to the Care Bear Nation. In case you're doubting Kushner's real purpose, it doesn't start with AIPAC. They get to important figures before they ever make it to office. I think that's fascinating. 1950s Mossad spies married Arabs to conceal identity. Ulysses Project secret operatives took on false identities. Married Palestinians had children, all while feeding intelligence to the Care Bear operators. This is like, could you imagine? Oh my word. But moving on. Look, your girl doesn't miss, okay? I was saying that Kushner and Lutnick need to go into the crystals in November of 2024. Now, it should be pointed out, Mark Carney, who's probably going to be replacing Justin Trudeau there in Canada, is a criminal, but he also helped to bail out Jared Kushner. So there is a connection there. Carney is a criminal. Canadians better pay attention to his behavior in America for what Canadians can expect. Stonewalling of the Senate Finance Committee over dealings with Jared Kushner and dealings with Elon Musk. Dealing with someone doesn't make you a criminal, however, trying to pervert the justice system does. 2 years after Carney took over, Brookfield was still stonewalling the U.S. Senate Finance Committee over a peculiar $1.2 billion Brookfield payout to Jared Kushner, while Kushner was deployed as Trump's envoy in the Middle East. It was also in 2022, Brookfield poured $250 million into Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter in a deal Bloomberg News called the consequence of a long-standing relationship between Brookfield and Musk. Very interesting, isn't it? Regardless of where you fall on Trump's proposal to extend the American empire to Gaza, it's just incorrect to say this was a random remark made in the moment. Kushner, his son-in-law and ex-senior advisor, has been talking about this for a while. And referencing here, Kushner says Gaza's waterfront property could be very valuable. And I thought this was funny. Kushner must be doing the same weird longevity treatments as Zuckerberg and Thiel. This was in 2022. While promoting his book, he said he believes he will live forever with the advances of science. Sounds a lot like Brian Johnson and a lot of these other, occult freaks who can't handle the fact that, like, they are going to die like everybody else. Now, this is today. Thousands protest Trump's son-in-law Serbia hotel project. Jared Kushner plans to build a luxury hotel on the site of the military headquarters in Belgrade, which was destroyed by U.S. planes in 1999. He also wants to build a seaside resort in Gaza, an area cleared by U.S. bombs. Unreal. This is happening, this was yesterday that these protests were taking place. Kushner, son of convicted felon Charles Kushner, learned from the best criminals. Chris Christie called out these grifters. Yeah, how did Jared get $2 billion from the Saudis without being an experienced investment banker? That's such a good question, isn't it, though, when you think about it? It might be more proper, so Zeist is saying, it might be more proper to say Shadow President Jared Kushner pardoned Aviam Sella, Jonathan Pollard's handler, at the request of his old family friend, Bibi. Like so many other Trump admin portfolios, pardons were given over to Kushner. How was this allowed? That is a very good point. That was in the first term. That's why these rappers were given pardons and stuff. So I find that very interesting to keep in mind. And here I am in October of 2024 saying, right now, Kushner is probably rubbing his hands together, thinking about turning Gaza into luxury real estate after they are finished with their bad activities. I want nothing to do with this wicked man. Like I said, your girl doesn't miss, does she? Soon after Trump's first term ended in 2021, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, founded the investment firm Affinity Partners. The monarchies of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar invested billions in Kushner's firm, which invests in Care Bear companies, profiting from illegal settlements. Isn't that fascinating? Senior Trump advisor Kushner floated the idea of implementing a U.S. digital dollar, just like China did, in order to better monitor and control people and the economy. Axios reported today Kushner, quote, might well return to the White House if his father-in-law wins again. So, this was an older article, but just because he's not formally there doesn't mean he's not advising from the shadows. According to Axios, this was just last month, Bibi met with Kushner while he was in Washington last week to discuss Trump's Gaza plan. Like I said, he may not be officially in the administration, but he's there in the background advising. Kushner undermined the people who believed in immigration restriction and tough-on-crime policy. He initially tipped off Silicon Valley to stop efforts to dramatically revise the H-1B visa program. He fought against implementing the immigration freeze in 2020 and was a key player in putting together the Platinum Plan, which included diversity training for cops and essentially 500 in reparations by another name, pushed for the expanding of the EB-5 visa program, which mainly benefits wealthy Chinese, and the list goes on. And finally here, one more thing. Jared is close friends with Vivek, and as senior advisor to Trump, Kushner pushed a national COVID surveillance system around the same time Vivek said he was talking to policymakers about it. Isn't that interesting? And so, listen, that's all I wanted to share today. Like I said, this man has no business being anywhere near the White House, but I'm interested to know what you guys think, what you make of Jared Kushner, and I hope you all have a good day.